Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and in Yirtzeh Hashem today we will be learning Daf Kuf Samach Tes Amud Aleph and completing Siman Shin Chav Ches. We pick up today on the bottom line of Kuf Samach Ches Amud Beis with Siman Shin Chav Ches Sif Mem Ches. My apologies. Once again, today's share will be an audio-only share. I'm sorry that that's been happening a little bit more frequently. Mirz Hashem, that will not be the case. It's just with various things going on, various difficulties, I've had no choice but on certain days to do audio only. Our learning should be a schos for Achenu Kabeis Yisrael, Hanasuna Batzara Bashivya, Ha'imdebe Bayom Babein Bayabasha, Hamakim Yerachem Alehem, V'yitzim Yitzar L'Rvacha, Me'afela La'ira, B'shibad L'Geula, Hashta Bagalo, V'zman Kariv, and Emaramein. Our learning should be a schos for Fuah Shalema, for Gila Shifra Bas Ilan Udal, Yeshua Levi, Ben Ahuva Malka Chana, Chava Hadassah Bas Serel, Rivka Bas Shiraleah, and Yitzchak ben Tzion ben Dusha. They should all have a refuah shalema b'seich shar chol Yisrael. We're mispal that in the schus of the limud HaTorah of Klal Yisrael, the Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over every member of Klal Yisrael b'chol makom shehem. As I am recording right now, al pi cheshbon, this should be the shir of Erev Rosh Hashanah. I'd like to take the opportunity to both thank all of my listeners for allowing me the schus to be Marbitz Torah. I thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for the incredible schus. We're mispal every day. We should be zaycha lilmoid or lalamed. I thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for the tremendous schus to allow me to be Marbitz his Torah Hakdosha. It's something that I don't take for granted, and I don't take the listenership for granted either. I have a tremendous amount of appreciation to those of you who choose to listen to my share. There are so many shiurim available. I really appreciate those of you who decide to learn Torah using my share and give me the schus to be Marbitz Torah. You should all have a ksiva v'chasima tova, a good gebenched yar, filled with everything wonderful, with Yiddish anachas, with parnasa, with gezunt, with shalom bayis, with parnasa berevach, shidduchim for children, etc., etc. Okay, moving on. Shin Chav Ches Sif Mem Ches says the Mechaber, Aser lahaniach beged al maka sheyoitzi mimenu dam. You're not allowed to take a beged, an article of clothing, or a piece of fabric, and place it upon a wound that is bleeding. Why? So the first halacha we're going to learn over here is mipnei shahadam yitzpa oisai. When you take a piece of fabric and you put it on a bleeding wound, the dam is going to dye, so to speak. It's going to color the fabric red, and therefore the Mechaber says this would be aser. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Kuf Memvav Yitzpa Oisai, it's going to dye the fabric. Now, you'll ask right away, says the Mishnah Berurah, I don't understand. This is certainly makalkal. You're staining the beged. You're staining it. You're getting a blood stain on it, which is derech kilkul. That is not beneficial to a certain. You're doing something detrimental to the fabric, and that usually renders something either not usher at all or only an issa d'Rabbanan. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'afagav the makalkal hu upater, even though this is certainly not an issa d'Oraisa because it is derech kilkul mikol makom asa l'chatchila, but is still in issa d'Rabbanan, so it is asa l'chatchila. Ubebeged adaim pshita d'aser, and if you're dealing with a red beged, says the Mishnah Berurah, it's a davar pashut that it is aser, because if you're dealing with a red beged, then by putting red dam on it, it's less kilkul. It's not so much detrimental to the red fabric if you're getting some more red dam on it, so that would be a reason to make it even more aser, and that's why he says it would be pashut, that it would be aser. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, going on to Kuf Samach Tes Amud Aleph, of a makam hatchak, under pressing circumstances where you have no choice, you need to stop the bleeding, you need to put something on the wound. Hiskimo ha'achreinim d'yesh lahakel. The achreinim agree that you could be mekel to huderech lichluch, because again, all you're doing over here really is staining the garment. It's derech lichluch, and therefore in a makam hatchak we would be mekel, and we would allow you to do this. Moving along the top line of Kuf Samach Tes Amud Aleph, next halacha says the Mechaber, Va'aser lahoitzi dam mehamaka. You're not allowed to do something to extract blood from a wound, from a cut. So sometimes somebody has a cut and they're afraid that maybe some dirt got into the cut, some kind of contamination, and therefore they think it would be beneficial to the healing of the wound to squeeze it and actually extract dam. You want to expel some blood from the wound, and together with it, you hope to expel some foreign material or something that may cause an infection. Says the Mechaber, also lohaitzi dam me'amaka. You're not allowed to do something to extract blood from the wound. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kadukov Bem Zayin, V'asa lohaitzi dam, hu'inyin b'fnei atzmai. The Mishnah Berurah says, this second halacha of Sif Mem Ches has nothing to do with the first halacha of Mem Ches. The first halacha of Mem Ches was discussing the Isser of Tzeveya, of dyeing, and telling you can't put a piece of fabric on a bleeding wound because you're going to dye the fabric. Now we have another really or unassociated halacha, which is you're not allowed to do anything to extract dam from a wound. Dahainu, she'asa litchak biyadav alamaka, you're not allowed to press with your hand on a wound, kidei lahoitzi dam. These three words are very, very critical. You're not allowed to press on the wound in order to extract dam. If you're going to bind the wound with something, even if you're doing something that where the malacha and the isser of tzeveya does not apply, you're not allowed to tie or bind something tight onto a wound. And again, three very critical words. You're not allowed to do it kidei sheyetze dam, in order to extract dam. Now, what's the problem here? Says the Mishnah Berurah, because doing anything in order to extract dam would be the Issa Daraisa of chayvel for having av malacha. This is part of netilas neshama. When you do something to extract blood from a person, we learned earlier, ki adam hu hanefesh, the dam, the Torah calls the nefesh. That's where the nefesh is, in the dam. So when you take out dam, you're doing the tilas neshama. This would be an iser da'araisa. V'yesh yisayvrim, and there are those that hold duadin, the same halacha would apply. If you put something on a wound that has the effect of drawing out pus, lymph, other types of fluids, vidam, and blood, kigoin tzukzalb. What he calls here in the brackets tzukzalb, I've no idea what it is, but I believe it's some type of salve. The kayotza bazet was something similar. Gam kein heva malacha da'araisa, since this salve has the effect of drawing out blood, by putting it on the wound, you would be over the yisad da'araisa of chayvel, kevin sheniskaven lozet, since that is your intent, to draw out blood. Even if you'll argue that it's not an Issa Daraisa, it's certainly an Issa Darabanan. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, Hamadabik Sheretz Aluka. If somebody takes a leech, Shekarin Piyavkis, a eglain. This is a leech. If somebody puts a leech on the body, Shetimtzoitz Dam, so that it should suck blood. They're back in the day, and I believe even nowadays, there are times when they believe that to have some dam sucked out of a particular part of the body using a leech could actually be beneficial. So if somebody takes a leech and puts it on his body in order so that it should suck out blood, mitzadei da Magen Avram diyesh chiyuv bazeh, the Magen Avram is under the opinion that this would be an Issa Daraisa, because again, you're doing something in order to extract dam. And therefore, also b'cholzel kul yam alaseis al yidei Yisrael l'chayla she'ein by sakana ela al yidei ein Yehudi. Since the Magen Avram is of the opinion that this would be an Issa Daraisa, Yisrael, a Yid, would certainly not be allowed to do this for a chayla she'ein by sakana on Shabbos. You can't do an Issa Daraisa for a chayla she'ein by sakana. Ha'moitzit stam b'fiv min ha'chabura. If somebody sucks blood out of a wound with his mouth, chayiv, that would be an Issa Daraisa. You're extracting dam from the body. And therefore, also limtzait stam shebein hashinayim. You're not even allowed to suck out blood if the gums are bleeding and you want to close your lips and then draw breath in your closed mouth to create suction to suck out the dam from between the teeth. This is something that would be awesome. So now I want to take a moment and pause here. we had two halachas here so far that are both very, very negeya. The first halacha of Sif Memches is that you're not allowed to take a piece of fabric and put it onto a bleeding wound because of the isser of tseveya, of dying. Now, somebody gets a cut on Shabbos. The first reaction to a cut is to take something, either a bandage or a piece of fabric of some kind, and apply pressure to the cut in order to stop the bleeding. Now, that right away would involve both issues, halacha number 1 of Memches and halacha number 2. Again, halacha number 1 is the problem of tzeveya, of dyeing the fabric. Well, in that case, any fabric or any bandage or anything that you take to apply pressure to the wound, it's going to get dam on it, and l'chayra you're going to come up against this problem. The second halacha is also lahitzi dam me'amaka. You're not allowed to do anything that's going to extract blood from the wound, and the Mishnah Berurah said that means you're not allowed to lidchoik biyadav al hamaka. You're not allowed to apply pressure with your hand onto the wound. So, if somebody gets a cut on Shabbos, is there a problem applying pressure to the wound using a bandage in order to stop the bleeding? Is it a problem of tseveya? Is it also a problem of netilas neshama, of extracting dam? So the answer is that in most cases, probably not. First of all, it depends exactly what you're going to use. If you're going to use something which is a throwaway, if you're using something disposable, so you're using a piece of gauze that you're going to throw away, you're binding a Band-Aid onto the cut, and you're doing it tightly, again, to help stop the bleeding. The Band-Aid is a throwaway, the gauze pad is a throwaway. The poskim say that if you're dealing with something that is a throwaway, there is no isser of tseveya. And let's remember, there's another mitigating factor here that the Mishnah Berurah mentioned, and that is that this is certainly derech lichluch. Certainly, whatever it is that you're putting on the wound, you are getting it dirty. You're not dyeing it. You're not making it a pretty color. You're staining it. You're getting it dirty. And therefore, is it daraisa? Certainly not. And if you're using a throwaway, if you're using something disposable, the poskim say there can't be any isser of tseveya at all. As far as putting pressure on the wound in order to stop the bleeding, I was thinking about it, and I noticed right away here in the Mishnah Berurah that twice he uses the magical 3 words. When is this aser? Said the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu she'aser litchak biyadav al hamaka kidei lahoitzi dam. The problem over here is the isser of netilas neshama. It's the isser of extracting blood. When you put pressure on a cut in order to stop the bleeding, you're not doing it kidei lahoitzi dam. You're not doing it to extract dam. You're doing it in order to stop the dam. Now, you might wonder, okay, fine, I'm not doing it to extract the dam, I'm doing it to stop the bleeding, but is there a psik resha angle over here? Is it a psik resha that when you put pressure to the wound, you're going per force to extract blood? I don't think so. I think when you apply direct pressure to the wound, whatever blood already oozed out from the burst blood vessels, you might expel it further, but we have learned that that's not an issa daraisa, right? Whenever you have, the only time it's an issa daraisa of netilas neshama is when you force out dam that is nivla bebasar. It's dam that's absorbed in the flesh. But if it's dam that has already exuded from the flesh, then it's not an issa daraisa, for sure not. So over here, and I don't even think there's a psik resha that you're necessarily going to extract blood at all. So again, to take a gauze pad, to take a Band-Aid, to take a throwaway paper towel, to take a tissue, to take a piece of toilet paper, any one of these types of items where it's something that's a throwaway, there would be no problem taking it and applying pressure to a cut in order to stop the bleeding. Now, it goes without saying that if it's a serious wound and there's any kind of degree of sakana or even suffix sakana, then all of these concerns go out the window. You could take whatever you have available and you could apply pressure to a wound in order to use proper first aid techniques. Okay, now we continue in the Mechaber on the top line, and the Mechaber now returns to Isser number 1 of Sif Memches, and that was the Shaila of Tseveya. And the Mechaber said, You can't take a piece of fabric and put it on the dam because you're going to be tzeveya the fabric with the dam. Says the Mechaber L'kach, therefore, yesh l'rchaitz hamaka b'mayim, you should wash off the wound using water, oy b'yayin, or using wine, tchila. First, wash off the makkah, laha'avir dam shebamaka, in order to wash away the blood, so that there should be no problem of tzeveya when you go ahead and you put fabric on it. I assume this means that you're going to allow the wine to wash away, so you're not going to be tzeveya with the wine either. There are those that say, continues the Mechaber, shekorech kure achvish al hamaka. There are those that would say that a smart thing to do is to take spider webs and place spider webs on the wound, umechasa behem kol adam, cover up the entire bloody area by packing it with spider webs. The chol chabura, the whole wound, cover up the whole wound with spider webs, v'achakach kerech alav smartut, and then go ahead and put a rag or a piece of fabric over it as a bandage. So by covering it up with the spider webs, now there's no bloody area, there would be no problem of tzeveya. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Cotton Kuf Mem Tes, V'yesh Oimrim Shekoirech, Bebeis Yosef Mefakvuk Bazeh. The Beis Yosef takes issue with this Eitzah Mishum de Merape. The Beis Yosef said that the spider webs actually have a therapeutic effect on the wound, and therefore it will be also because of Shrika Samonim. And that's why the Mechaber chose to write this Eitzah over here as a Yesh Oimrim, because he himself takes issue with it. Avav El Yerabba, B'Shem Abush Yomtov V'Chem B'Tesef Shabbos B'Tzadet Lohakal. The El Yerabba, the Abush Yomtov, Tesef Shabbos are makel, and they say you're allowed to use the spider webs. Moving along to the final sif of this Siman, Sif Mem Tes. Says the Mechaber, Asr Losum Pesila B'Piat Tabas. You're not allowed to insert a suppository. Now, the suppository that the Mechaber is speaking about over here is a rather primitive type of suppository, and it's a suppository, I believe, I'm not a doctor, but I believe I am right, it's a suppository that works using a different methodology than the types of medicated suppositories that we have. This was more of a mechanical suppository. This was a suppository that was used in order to manipulate the rectal opening, to manipulate the opening of the bowels, and to stimulate them. I think the purpose of the mechanical stimulation is both to open up the rectal opening and to stimulate the rectal nerves so that they should fire properly and that the rectal opening should open and allow for a proper bowel movement. But in any case, says the Mechaber, also losum pesila b'piat tabas, you're not allowed to insert a suppository into the rectal opening, kederech shenayhagim lasais lamishahu otzur, in the way that it was typically done for somebody who was constipated. Ela im ken yosem oisa b'shinui. You would have to do it with a shinui. You would have to do it in an unusual way. And what is that? Sheyechazena b'shtei etzba'osav. You only grasp it with two fingers. V'yanichena b'nachas, and you insert it gently. Now, the Mechaber does not say over here precisely what the problem is. What isser are we dealing with over here? So we'll see that in the Mishnah Berurah. First, in the Mishnah Berurah's Cotton Kuf Nun, he's going to turn into more, not tangential, but not to the heart of the issue. He's going to turn to some peripheral issues here. Says the Chavetz Chaim's Cotton Kuf Nun. So the Mechaber said, you're not allowed to use a suppository. Says the Chavetz Chaim, v'choshkin da also lost some krister. You're certainly not allowed to use a krister. A krister was an enema preparation. So an enema is a liquid preparation that you inject into the rectum in order to create volume and pressure, and that has the effect of stimulating a bowel movement and allowing the excrement to come out and stopping the easing the constipation. Says the Mishnah Berurah, an enema you're certainly not allowed to use. Af shehuchna me'esmoil. Even if you created this preparation, you mixed up the ingredients of the enema on Erev Shabbos, You're still not allowed to use it on Shabbos. You wouldn't even be allowed to do this using a shinui. Why? Because here you have a problem of gzeira mishum shchikas samamonim. You see, over here, you're using a therapeutic preparation. Whenever you use a therapeutic preparation, we're going to have the gzeira of shchikas samamonim. If we allow you to use a therapeutic preparation on Shabbos, you might come to do shchikas samamonim in order to create a therapeutic preparation on Shabbos. So this would be the gzeira mishum shchikas samamonim 101. So to use an enema, that you can't do on Shabbos, even if you prepared it on Erev Shabbos. Unless you're dealing with an ill individual, even if he's a chayla she'ein by sakana. So if you have somebody who's suffering from chronic constipation to the extent that he's a chayla she'ein by sakana, but he's a bona fide chayla, it's something that could be even chayla kol haguf, it's affecting his functioning, so it's considered a chayla kol haguf. Then it would be mutter to do this, certainly al yedei shinui. Now it's interesting that the Mishnah Berurah makes the statement over here that it's mutter al yedei shinui, because in other places in this Siman, we seem to have seen from the Chavetz Chaim that he holds that the gzeira of shchikas samanim is waived by a chayla she'ein by sakana if he's a chayla kol haguf, even without doing so al yedei shinui. Over here, he suggests that you need a shinui. That's something that is tzarech yoser iyun. But be that as it may, over here the Chavetz Chaim says, so let's, again, paper trail. First, the Chavetz Chaim says, you cannot use an enema, even if you prepared the enema from before Shabbos, gzeira mishum shchikas samanim. But if you're dealing with a chayla she'ein by sakana, but he's a chayla to the degree, let's say, that he's a chayla kol haguf, then we apply the rules of Sif Yod Zayin, and then certainly to use the enema with a shinui would certainly be mutter. Again, in other places from the Chavetz Chaim, it sounds like it should even be mutter without a shinui, personally. Now, another case where this would be very negeya is by very young children. First of all, we have learned that a katan always has the status of a chayla she'ein by sakana. So if you have a young child that's really suffering from constipation, and you want to use an enema, so right away you're dealing with a chayla she'ein by sakana, and you could go ahead and you could use an enema, certainly with a shinoi, I believe even without a shinoi, but I would say you could ask a shayla. V'yizar shalayav lidei malacha daraisa, and the Chavetz Chaim throws in a cryptic phrase over here, and he says if you're going to use the enema by a chayla, make sure that you do not come to a malacha daraisa. I really don't know what malacha daraisa he's referring to. You know, usually when the Mishnah Berurah says this, it's because he's allowing you to do something that can easily come to an issa daraisa. What issa daraisa would this come to? Unless he means, be careful that you don't come to shchikas samamonim. I don't know. Gam, furthermore, lo ya'arev mayim v'shemen kedera sha'oisin v'chamavur l'kamam b'simin shin lamed aleph siv zayin ayin sham b'Mishnah Berurah ubir halacha. If you're going to use an enema, so a common enema that they used to use was to mix water and oil. Not sure if the purpose of the oil was perhaps to act as a lubricant, but they would mix water and oil, and that's what they would use for the enema. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you're going to use the enema on Shabbos, do not mix the water and the oil. I think this could be, first of all, because now you're getting closer to shchikas samanim, because now you're actually preparing a therapeutic solution on Shabbos. Now, it's not shchikas samanim, you're not grinding herbs, but you are actually preparing a therapeutic solution on Shabbos. That comes even closer to shchikas samanim, so don't do that. I think in Shid Lamed Aleph, we're also going to learn that to take oil and water and to put it into a keli and to be teirif it, to like beat it in order to mix it. Remember, it's not easy to mix oil and water, right? Oil and water don't mix. But if you beat it, let's say you take a fork and you beat it the way you would beat an egg, then it does tend to mix, at least temporarily. Eventually it'll separate out, but you can somewhat mix it, at least so it should remain mixed for a short amount of time. Now, I believe we're going to learn that that looks scarily close to bishul. It's going to look to somebody, to an onlooker who sees you, with some nice extra virgin olive oil and water in a bowl, and you're taking a fork, and you're going, and you're beating it. It looks like you're preparing to cook something on Shabbos. Ayin Shabbat Mishnah Berurah Bir Halacha. Elo, rather, what should you do, says the Chavetz Chaim? Yishbach HaKoil L'Seich HaKli, pour the water and the oil into a keli together, and as much as it mixes, it mixes. V'toiv l'aseh HaKoil Al Yidei Yehudi Yem Efsher, the Chavetz Chaim says if you have the option of doing this through the agency of an Ein Yehudi, it would be noch beser. Moving along to Cotton Kuf Down Aleph. So the Mechaber said you can't use this psila. By the way, literally a psila is a wick, because the suppository is kind of like wick-shaped. Now, the Mishnah Berurah says that this suppository that they would use, ha'asuya mechelev, sometimes it was made out of fat, a biris, or it was made out of some kind of a soap, oy miniyar, or sometimes it was just rolled and packed paper. And that's why I say sometimes it was simply a mechanical device. Usha'are dvarim, or maybe it was made out of some other kind of material. Now, we so far have not discussed why is the use of this primitive suppository usher. What isser are we talking about? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Tam Yisuran, the reason for the isser over here is mishum the aidi de memashmei sham kama pa'amim. Since the way this suppository was used, it was used as a tool to mechanically manipulate the rectal opening. And what you would do with it is, you would insert it, and then take it out, and then insert it, and then take it out, and then insert it, and then take it out. And this was done in order to stimulate the bowels and the rectal opening. So the Tami Suran, since you're going to be manipulating that area constantly, and you're going to be inserting and pulling out this psila, karov levadai sheyesher haseor sham. It is a karov levadai. It's just about a psik resha that you're going to end up uprooting hairs in the rectal area. And that's going to be a problem of toilish. Truth is, we discussed this halacha earlier in Siman Shin Yud Beis, where we spoke about somebody cleaning himself after using the facilities, somebody cleaning himself using a rock or a pebble, and we were worried over there also about uprooting hairs. Vayin Bir Halacha, and take a look at the Bir Halacha Dibra Maschel Lasum. Now the Bir Halacha struggles, and he really doesn't have an answer, with what would seem to be an obvious problem. And that is that here, all the way at the end of Shin Chav Ches, where we've been dealing with refuah, we're talking about this fellow who is suffering from constipation, and he's using a psila to manipulate the rectal opening, and we're saying that the reason it's ulcer is because he might come to uproot hairs. How about Gzeira Mishum Shchikas Samonim? Now, you'll jump right away, and you'll say, Rabbi Weiss, there's no room here for Gzeira Mishum Shchikas Samonim. He's not using a therapeutic solution. He's not using a medicine that could theoretically be created by Shchikas Samonim. He's using a suppository. He's using what the Mishnah Berurah said, let's say, rolled up, condensed, compressed paper as a tool. That there's no inyan of Shchikas Samonim. He's using fat. There's no Shchikas Samonim. He's using biris, soap. There's no Shchikas Samonim. So you'll ask me, what are you worried about? How could there be an Isser Gzeira Shemim Shchikas Samonim? The answer is something that we learned in the Mishnah Berurah earlier, which is if you're trying to accomplish something, now, you're not using any kind of therapeutic preparation. You're using a mechanical tool. But if it's something that can be accomplished using a therapeutic preparation, then there is an Isser of Shchikas Samonim. The case that we had was when you want to do exercise in order to make the chayla break a sweat. So we said it's also mishum shchikas samonim. Why? What kind of shchikas samonim? There's no exercise pill. It's exercise. It's physical work. How is there gzeira mishum shchikas samonim? The Mishnah Berurah said the answer is because sometimes you don't make the chayla sweat by having him do exercise. Sometimes you make him sweat by giving him some kind of a medicinal preparation. So since the end goal can be accomplished with a therapeutic preparation, there's an isser of gzeira mishum shchika samanim, even if you do it through physical activity. L'chayra, the same thing should apply over here. We've spoken already many times in this siman about a preparation called a laxative. So the whole reason you're doing this rectal manipulation is to relieve constipation. So it's true that you're doing it with a condensed piece of paper and you're doing it through mechanical manipulation. But it also could be accomplished with something that we spoke about before. The words he used were mayim, let's say shemishalshalim, kois. We spoke about earlier that you're not allowed to drink. Where is it? The Mishnah Berurah said, that's right. Osir lishtais mashke hamishalshal. You're not allowed to drink a mashke hamishalshal, a laxative. A laxative is a therapeutic solution. So why isn't this osir gzerim mishum shchikas samonim? And the Chavetz Chaim struggles with this in the Bir Halacha here, and he says tzarchian. He doesn't have an answer. Okay, Ois Cotton Kufnan Bays. We said that if you have to do this, you have to do it with a shino. You grasp the suppository with two fingers and you do it benachas. The reason this is mutter is because if you do it with a shino with two fingers and you do it benachas, then it's no longer a psik ratio that you're going to come to take out hairs, to uproot hairs. This whole halach is only germane if the suppository was already prepared from Erev Shabbos. But to create this psila, this suppository, on Shabbos, even if it's simply made out of paper, that you roll, and you condense it and you make it hard, to actually make the suppository on Shabbos, you're making a keli. Because again, what you're doing is you're making something that you use for mechanical manipulation. That is a keli. So to make it is makeh b'patish. Unless you're dealing with a chayla she'esh b'isakana. But if you use a piece of a turnip as this suppository, mutter. That would be mutter. Because we learned earlier that there is no din of makeh b'patish, of making a keli, of tikkun maneh, when it comes to foodstuffs, even if it's only a meichel behema. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Siman Shin Chav Tes. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu should send Yeshua's refuas in the schus of learning Siman Shin Chav Ches. The Rebbeinu should send refuas to all those in need. Yeshua's refuas, parnasa, shidduchim, to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the Biaskal Tzedek B'mher V'yameinu. Everybody should be zeicher to aksiva v'chsima tova, a good gebenched yar. Be well.